Hey everyone, welcome to Ian and Friends. I am FloBikes Senior Editor Ian Dille.
And I am Michael Sheehan, Ian's friend. Today we saw some news about cycling's favorite kind of top GC rider, Chris Froome.
Yeah, let's run it down because it's been a crazy 24 hours. So we're just going to go in U.S. Central based times here, about Sunday morning. ASO, the organizers of the Tour de France, announced that they are barring Chris Froome from competing in this year's Tour de France because he has a lingering doping case based on an adverse analytical finding at the Vuelta a España from September, which has yet to be resolved. And
9 months.
yeah, 9 months. These things take time.
Yes.
And then Sunday night, supposedly there's going to be a hearing. There's going to be a decision on Tuesday as to whether Chris Froome can race in the Tour de France or not. They have to go before the French Olympic Committee of all governing parties.
Well, yeah, we're not sure why they have the top honors of deciding this appeal that Team Sky was
somebody
trying
has to decide.
Launch. Yeah, so the ball's been passed around to the French committee. And then today, this morning, a day before the appeal was going to happen, we saw that Chris Froome is exonerated. He will start the Tour de France. Adverse analytical finding is no more.
Yeah, so like everybody, we don't have a ton of answers, but we do have a lot of questions.
And opinions.
And opinions. So let's run it back. I think the biggest question here out of everything is what the heck is going on? Like, what was the process by which WADA and the UCI were able to just clear Chris Froome once the pressure was put on them by ASO?
Don't know.
And we won't know until we actually see the reasoned decision. Apparently, this is a document. I thought it was actually something that that USADA just made up. When they brought down Lance, but this is a document that's prepared with every doping case, which outlines, the evidence that was taken in, the procedure by which the athlete was banned. So we know that Chris Froome's legal team put together a 1,500-page document outlining why he was not guilty. I guess you could use the phrasing.
You could only imagine that they were hoping that those 1,500 pages would take beyond July to read. That is like probably part of the strategy there. But we got some power readers. They made it through, and yeah, we don't know what the details are. Like specifics have not really been disclosed from official sources. Chris Froome says that in the coming days, details are going to emerge, and he did politely tell us that they are very complicated.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't understand.
Yeah. Too complicated to explain. So, but look for details in the coming days. So sure, but David Brailsford, owner, manager, Team Sky guy, he told us that there was salbutamol levels taken in all of Chris Froome's post-stage doping tests throughout the Vuelta a España, and the argument that Brailsford has hit us with first is that the 2,000 nanogram salbutamol trigger that this whole thing dates back to was actually within a reasonable amount of variation if you look at Chris Froome's salbutamol levels fluctuating throughout the entire Vuelta a España.
Yeah, so he's arguing that every athlete's physiology is different, and the way they take in a drug and process that drug in a test, in a urine sample, varies. Sure, that's true. The argument against that would be that the doping associations take that into account, and that's why there's thresholds for these drugs. And I would think that 1,000 nanograms for salbutamol is at the very high end of that threshold. And we've seen racers like Alessandro Petacchi, Diego Ulissi, have salbutamol findings above that 1,000 threshold and be sanctioned. Not the full 2-year sanction that you might get for a harder drug, you might say, like EPO or testosterone, but they were still sanctioned, and so we have a lot to learn in terms of the process that was followed in Chris Froome's case and, ultimately declaring that this was not an adverse analytical finding. But yeah, we just don't know yet.
And ultimately, I don't care what Dave Brailsford has to say about this. Like, genuinely, I am going to take every word that he says with a grain of salt because that's his job. He has been saying from day one, same with Chris Froome, we're innocent, blah, blah, blah. We know what their story is. They are going to spin this, create just like reasonable doubt, and, they're getting away with it, whatever it is. I can't really be the judge, but I would really like to see an official UCI WADA statement actually talking about the science and what they used in their labs.
Let's get into who wins and who loses out of this decision, out of this drama. I mean, obviously, Chris Froome and Team Sky win. They always win. They always get what they want.
Yeah, they are the big winners right now. We also have Vuelta a España and Giro d'Italia. Chris Froome won both of these races. None of the race organizers want an asterisk next to the winning rider's name. So both of those races are definitely taking a big sigh of relief right now because their leaderboard remains intact, no drama.
And the fans win. I mean, whether or not you fall on, yay, Chris Froome is racing the Tour de France, or nay, he's a cheater and I don't like him anymore, we're going to have the world's best bike racer in the world's biggest race, and that's what we always want. And not only do we have Chris Froome coming, with a great storyline behind him, trying to win his third Grand Tour in a row, his fifth Tour de France, do the Giro Tour double, all these amazing things. We have a whole host of GC contenders that are ready to knock him off the top step, from his rival at the Giro d'Italia, Tom Dumoulin, to Simon Yates' brother, Adam, Nibali, Valverde, Quintana, all these people. It's going to be a huge show, and it's pretty awesome that Chris Froome and Team Sky are going to be there in full force. But that brings us to the losers.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that the UCI is losing here. They kind of dropped the charges, but this is just another murky, not transparent decision that we have just seen in cycling so often. And as fans, we're sick of it. We want to actually know that we can trust the people who are here to enforce the rules, hand down the sanctions. And I mean, Chris Froome he's told that he can't race the Tour de France, and then a day later, charges dropped. Like, I'm sorry, just.
Don't spit that all over here.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna put that right there. I don't like the timing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, my take is that ASO, in banning Froome from the Tour, it was really a card that they were playing to force the UCI to make a decision. The UCI had waffled over this for so long. WADA had waffled over this for so long. Nobody wanted to be the person that ultimately banned Chris Froome or decided not to ban him. And, kudos to ASO. They've done this before successfully and unsuccessfully with trying to bar riders from the Tour de France. But saying, we don't want this racer at the world's biggest bike race with a doping suspension hanging over his head, and that ultimately forced the UCI to make a decision. A lot of these guys know each other. The head of the UCI is French. Bernard Hinault was out there raising a ruckus. So I would imagine behind the veil of what we're seeing in the media, there's a lot of internal communications, just very live text threads going on between UCI and ASO.
Yeah, it is also just kind of ridiculous that the ASO and the Tour de France actually has the clout to pull this off and force the hand of the UCI. Because, Froome is going to these other races and he's winning, he's contending, and it just shows the disparity between the different events. And cycling, there just needs to be more cohesive rules and actual structure, because why does one race get to just say, no, this isn't going to fly, when he's going out and doing a bunch of different races? I don't know. All the riders are there still trying to make a living. It should be just like either you can race or you can't.
Yeah, and I think this brings us to our final point, which is, the other loser is also the fans. As much as we're winning from this, we're losing because cycling, again, is living under a veil of uncertainty. We're having villains created in the sport, through doping innuendo, doping positives, not a clear definition of whether someone is cheating or not. And so, what we need is for, just greater accountability on the part of the governing body, and not having these sorts of situations where a rider is being miraculously cleared of a doping violation a week before the world's biggest bike race.
Yeah, just cohesiveness in enforcing rules and fairness. I think it's a reasonable ask. Because Team Sky, every team is going to play this exactly how Team Sky did. It's their job to start the race and win it. And governing body has to look like they have their stuff a bit more together.
All right, well, 5 days, Tour de France, are you ready?
It's going to be a show.
We'll see you then.
Thanks for joining.